Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you all for attending today's distinguished public lecture featuring a very special guest, Vijay Mittal. Vijay is the Corporate Vice President for Artificial Intelligence Architecture and Strategy at Microsoft and is the forefront of the digital revolution that continues to engulf our world. Even working in the technology field, I constantly feel I am trying to keep up with the rapid leaps in our technological capabilities. And I'm personally very excited to hear from Vijay, who we can say is at the technological frontier, pushing forward the bounds of human understanding. Indeed, this is the very spirit with which universities, including the Aga Khan University, were founded. Vijay currently works on AI at scale to transform high cognitive processes across the manufacturing, pharmaceutical, energy, FMCG, financial services, and public sectors. He also supports CXOs, businesses, and technological leaders on across-the-board transformations and on institutionalizing the intersection of people, culture, and technology. I should note that he has also filled over 120 patents, most of them as lead inventor. Finally, I would like to acknowledge our regular partners, the University of Central Asia and the CXO Global Forum, for the continued support in bringing eminent individuals to share their knowledge with us. Without further delays, please welcome Vijay Mittal.
Thank you indeed. Mr. Shaukat Ali Khan, thank you indeed for the wonderful introduction and for inviting me. It's a great honor to be here. And as I was discussing with him, what aspect of AI to discuss at this distinguished forum, we felt that we should not do yet another, this is how AI works, or occasionally, this is why AI is scary, and everything will either be great or bad, but focus on an aspect of, and we use the term AI very, very loosely. It's deep learning, machine learning, things that are glorified as AI. And anyway, focus on an aspect of AI that is uniquely relevant, we think, to an organization that operates all the way from Pakistan to Afghanistan to Central Asia to Africa to United Kingdom. A very multicultural organization, and in particular, including, of course, not just the Aga Khan University, but the developer network, where you are highly sensitive to each country's, each people's local culture. So that's the aspect of AI I thought we would focus on, both because that, I believe, impacts you the most, and also because you are, we believe, in the position to advance that aspect of AI the most. So anyway, that's the, so I've got a few slides, but I will, my style is to just show you how many there are so that, you don't think it's going to be a really long sort of thing. So they're just, 6 slides, but let's go into it. So let's just quickly skip over the kind of AI everybody I know already has read about. You encounter it every day: deep learning, observe lots of signals, recognize patterns, potentially predict future events, and recommend actions. And there are 3 illustrations here. There's a gas turbine at an electrical generation plant, observe signals, predict where failure is likely, and recommend preemptive maintenance. It's all very good stuff. Screen resumes starts getting a little bit more controversial here, especially if machine learning starts substituting for human intelligence. But again, the number of resumes some companies get can be as many as 1,000 for each position. So screen resumes, and as interviews happen, classify or help the interviewer classify the responses and recommend hiring, or more likely recommend what kind of position the person should take. Or with radiology, look at X-rays, MRIs, identify features whether anomalous or not, identify potential anomalies, and retrieve all the information that the radiologist or physician needs to diagnose and triage the patient at hand. So this is, I'm going to use the word classic AI. It's only since 2012, just 10 years ago, that really convolutional neural networks became scalable. We heard about ImageNet, deep learning became a reality. But what's common in these tasks is they're often repeated tasks. Turbines, resumes, X-rays. Yes, sure, you need a high degree of expertise, but the tasks you're doing all the time. And when the task is completed, with or without AI's help, we know whether we've done the job well. Maybe we know it immediately, maybe we'll know 6 months from now. But we know, yes, good job, great job. So we understand all that. So now let's focus to what I'm hoping really to concentrate on today. So let's look at AI of a very different type. So we'll go into how this works, whether it works or not, but let's just imagine for a second. I'm an English literature student at a high school, and I have an assignment on analyzing Hamlet's, Shakespeare's Hamlets in a conflict. Okay, is there an AI that helps me finish that assignment or finish it well? I'm a digital artist, maybe a surrealist, maybe writing a manga comic, and I want to depict an astronaut riding a horse. I mean, where do I get started? What's my inspiration here? Maybe no one has ever drawn an astronaut riding a horse. Should the suit buckle when you're sitting astride the horse? Let's get a little bit more complex. In a large company, there's a managing director, executive vice president, and the assistant is creating a detailed trip plan. The executive is going to visit a bunch of customers in Europe, assuming it's either, we are based in either in Asia or in America, but so we're going to Europe. And the director's or executive's spouse and a 4-year-old child are going to travel. And I'm the executive assistant, and I have to create a trip plan. And remember, I have multiple objectives here. Or let's take another example, which may be slightly more close to home. I'm on a campus of the Aga Khan University, and we are participating in a global clinical trial for a drug that claims, or at least hopes, to treat depression in teenagers, particularly those who have become depressed because they've suffered some sports injuries. And I'm the local clinical researcher. What are my inclusion criteria, exclusion criteria? How do I commission a whole bunch of people go to cities and villages and make sure that we get precision participation? So what's common here is these are relatively open-ended tasks. You can't just say you've done a job well, or there's always room for doing more, for higher and higher quality. And what do we mean by quality? How do we judge the quality? From the lens of a local values, of local culture? So let's just take one example. I'm going to take 2 or 3 examples here. I'll start with the one where a digital artist wishes to depict an astronaut riding a horse. Okay, so what does that mean? Like, which style? Again, great artists, are influenced by other great artists. Maybe nobody has drawn it. So how do I go about it? So clearly, if there's AI that can help me with inspiration, I don't have to copy. None of these pictures are exactly what I would want. And the last one with the duocorn, I don't even know what kind of animal, even in imagination, that is. So again, it depends on who I am and which situation I live in to decide what's a good rendering of my imagination. Let's take another example. I didn't mention it earlier, but a colleague of mine said I should use this example. So in China, when people, festive season, could be New Year, and they love putting up very individualized decorations outside. And they are text heavy. This particular one, I've been told, reads from the left, great happiness, great fortune, great luck. And the one on the right actually rhymes or derives from the first one. Prosperous family, prosperous people, prosperous enterprise. On the top, it says happiness arriving at doorstep. In the middle is a symbol for happiness. So now we're talking about AI to help me create an artifact that's incredibly culturally relevant, right? Now, culturally relevant is not just like we're in China. And now let's make it a little bit more complex. I'm an expatriate. I've been assigned to Beijing for 1 year. I'm in an apartment building. This is the front of an apartment, my apartment. And everybody knows that I'm not local. And yet I want to participate in the festivities. So what is appropriate for me as an expatriate to put up, as opposed to somebody who's been there, living there all their life? So again, we're now getting into AI that is helping people amplify activities that are very sensitive to local culture, local values, local mores, local norms. And one more example that I'd mentioned earlier, which is the clinical trial. So here we sort of imagine it's an East African medical school, but let's say the trial is global. And the trial is study of medicine to treat depression among teenagers with sports injuries. But sports injuries in China are completely different from something that may be in Kenya, people who do distance running. How do we identify those people? They may not have gone and reported their injury at the time. Distance runners don't have catastrophic injuries. I mean, yes, they can have Achilles tear, but often they're nagging injuries that keep them away for years or months, and they don't have enough care. So that qualifies as a sports injury as opposed to a catastrophic injury playing football, American football, or boxing. So again, how do we take this task, which is otherwise a normative task, and adapt it to local needs? So basically what we are talking about is this. We're talking about a kind of AI, and we'll go into how it works and why it works, but a kind of AI that has emerged really since 2019. It helps people in tasks that we would consider in various ways a creative task, where there's no end to the level of creativity. Sure, I could stop when it's good enough, but there's always room to do more. And judging good quality is not like a simple, you could not outsource it to people to say good, bad, like you do in a lot of AI, where you sort of simply ask mechanical Turks or people sitting in a third, in China, for example, in an outsourced company to say, tell me whether this was completed correctly or not. This is much more nuanced. So how does this AI work? Why does this AI work? And once we know that, then how do we make sure that we can adapt it for our own needs? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of the presentation and just go into the topic itself. Okay. So the presentation was just to set up the idea that there are tasks where a simple solution coming from an American company that you simply use locally, or like a Chinese company where we just use YouTube or TikTok, is not enough. So firstly, how does this AI work? I'm going to be, again, quite simplistic, but let's look at it this way. So before 2019, if AI was being trained to learn language, let's take a sentence. This is what would happen. Let's take a sentence. Let us table this motion, 5 words. And the word of interest is table. And AI would try to look at one word either side for context. That's a 3 gram, or 2 words either side of the context. of the word table. That is a 5 gram. And with just 3 grams and 5 grams, the world was able to create $1 trillion of value with Bing, Google, Baidu, Yandex, search engines. We did a really good job just with that. What we didn't do was look at 50 words upstream, 50 words downstream, whether this occurred in the minutes of a legislative body or whether this was in a blog post, and who was posting and what did they post previously. Now, once you can take a sentence from a clinical trial design and not just learn 2 or 3 words either side of the word sports injuries or term sports injuries, but everything, what kind of drug, what kind of disease, who were the principals, what other molecules are similar to the drug at test right now, functionally similar, structurally similar, geometrically similar. Now we have context. And really this new AI, what it tries to do is learns massive context. It looks, the results are very, very eerily good sometimes, but also sometimes uncannily bad. But the point is, we can now aspire to render an artist's imagination of a horse riding and astronaut riding a horse, and or cat astronaut, really, you can do that, riding a horse. What would a cat look like in an astronaut suit? Now, all those things are out there. There's no one has painted that picture ever before. But the point is we can learn that. So, okay, so let's just take it for given that this kind of AI exists, and there are systems like OpenAI's GPT-3, with open source systems like GPT-J, GPT-Neo. There are systems like DALL-E2, DALLE-2. They're trying to rhyme between the movie WALL-E and also Salvador, Dali, or a system from Microsoft and OpenAI together, where we have trained the system on trillions of lines of code called Copilot. So these systems are massive, multi-billion parameter systems that are learning from the world of information out there. So now the question is, what about my local values? Do they learn my local values? The problem is this. If your information, so the dirty secret is, these systems learn from information that is easily available on the internet. If you have a culture, a subculture, a people whose information is just in their own language, and the language is not widely spoken, and most likely is not on the internet, these systems will not learn from that. So these systems may not know. Now, China is very large, and there's a huge amount of AI, so the system likely knows how to generate those New Year's greetings. But does the system know how to generate a haiku, or a share, or a couplet, or a limerick? But what about something that is relevant just to a small region? So first of all, we have to now develop tests. Does the AI that's being developed by these large technology companies, does it understand my values, my culture? Now, we've been there before. So now we're talking about local culture, local values, local concepts. Before this, there was a huge debate that AI that learns over the internet, learns the biases of the world. It learns to associate doctors more with male and nurses more with female, which is completely wrong. So we learned how to test for that, gender bias. We learned how to test for ethnic bias. We learned how to test for bias between rich and poor person. And we learned how to de-bias those systems. Still work in progress, but we learned. But nobody really has developed tests for, does this system understand how we speak to a sick child in this country? In America, in many parts of America, the doctor would speak to the child as an equal. I'm not sure it's a particularly good thing to do, but explain to them the intricacies of the disease, including where they can look it up on the internet. Is that a right thing to do in our culture? With the doctors, with the patients, with the relationships between the family members and the patient, is it correct? So one of the companies I'm advising, they create systems or a system to help diagnose autism in teenagers and also give therapy, digital therapy. And in particular, this is being used in East Africa. Even though the company is based in Germany, the founders are from Nigeria and from Kenya. The relationship between the patient, the therapist, and family members are completely different. The way people speak, the tone that needs to be taken, completely different. So we have to know, what are we inheriting when we are taking AI that was trained simply on whatever happens to be out there? So can we test for that? How do we make sure this AI learns about our culture? Well, one simple thing we can do is make sure more and more information is available on the internet. If you hide the information away, people aren't going to be able to learn from it. Maybe that's practical, maybe that's not practical. Okay, that's one way. The other way is, this is called last mile adaptation. So I'll give you an example. On the internet, there are a lot of websites, streaming sites, where people are playing games. And the dialogue can be very macho and even to the level of toxicity, mainly because of the kinds of people who are playing and the kinds of games, which are shoot 'em up kind of games, killing people, your enemies and so on. And I want to use that AI, so this is a real example, to create a dialogue that is more empathetic. I'm trying to draw in teenage girls who otherwise would not participate in that or even be educational. So how do I suddenly make this AI that has learned the lingua franca of gaming, which really is not very empathetic, how do I make it in such a way that's acceptable here? So this is called last mile modeling, where you take the original AI, you find where the biases are, you map those biases, and you create counterfactual examples. So some people go and take existing gameplay, substitute every word with what you would wish, and train the AI on that. Okay. So there's a whole bunch of techniques that I have. One day, of course, how AI has created itself will change. So just like gender and ethnic bias has become such an important subject that now we don't leave it to something to be fixed later, but it's something that we create what's called a reward function. Like, how does AI know it's trained enough? AI knows it's trained well when it does not differentiate between two genders in a profession that is not gender specific. That's a nice test. And imagine a million tests like that. What we don't have are tests for local values, local norms, way people speak to each other, shorthand that we just assume that are part of our relationships, right? If you're providing customer service, and some of this AI is getting used now to write email to customers, actually either write email automatically or help people make the email more evocative, more sympathetic. Again, what's sympathetic in Seattle may not be sympathetic somewhere else, right? In Seattle now, because it's a tech hub, people just don't like words like dear sir or dear ma'am. That comes across like a parody, like somebody's being sarcastic. And yet, I know in other places that would be the right way to do it, at least for the first 5 emails with a correspondent. So basically, I don't want to sort of like belabor the point and rather have a little bit more time for Q&A. But I just want to go back to the last slide. And give me a second. So let's understand this emerging AI. Sometimes, they call large language models, large language image models, and a whole bunch of other systems are getting developed. My own team, one of my teams is working on molecule discovery, carbon capture. So this giant AI system technique called transformers, where you take a lot of information automatedly and learn from it, that's being applied to a whole bunch of scenarios. How do we test whether this AI fits our local culture, needs, or value system? Does not have to be local. If I'm a migrant living in another country, but my value is different from the host, I need to understand that. How do we influence this AI? By making sure that we are part of the digital information universe ourselves, assuming that is correct. That's not always appropriate. To the extent there's a mismatch, how do we locally shape the output? And how do we influence a debate in the AI community per se, so that people start working on AI to understand local norms, local values, local cultures, just in the way the debate on gender and ethnicity and other forms of bias really became mainstream. So I'm going to stop at this point. I'm hoping that I've not answered anything, and my only goal really was to raise some questions, right? Raise some awareness. So anyway, I will stop here. So I'll hand it back to Mr. Shaukat Ali Khan to take it from here. But thank you.
Thank you very much, Vijay, for giving us a completely different perspective of AI, and also actually getting up at 4 a.m. Seattle time for this talk. So I'm really, really thankful, and apologies for actually waking you up so early. So I have one initial question, and this is about your profile, not about the subject. That is, I think a lot of my colleagues, they are very interested to know what are the most important and interesting projects you have been through with Microsoft so far.
Yeah. So look, I came to Microsoft at a time where Microsoft did everything, right? We were by far the largest software company. This is like 20 years ago. And we provided the operating system for PCs and for servers, and therefore we had to cover everything. The industry has now become much larger, and there's more specialization. There are people who are working on medical software, people who are working on customer service software. So when I came to Microsoft, really it was very easy to work in almost anything. A person could start in graphics, say, I've done enough, and move to operating systems, move to servers, or move to healthcare. And that's the kind of profile that I took. So yes, right now I'm driving a lot of work around artificial intelligence, in particular, artificial intelligence to solve problems of drug discovery, creation of new chemicals with lower energy input, lower PFAS contaminants, or carbon capture and storage of captured CO2 in deep saline aquifers and basalt formations for 100 years in a way that we can monitor that they're not leaking. So that's the kind of problems I'm solving right now. But immediately before this, I worked on a project called Reality as a Service, horrible name, but it was really like how to help people in large industrial spaces to avoid accidents, or even know, hey, who's here who can help me unload or pick up this large box. Before that, and I will not go any further than that, before that, I conceived and created a product called PowerApps, and that I still believe it's still the Microsoft's fastest growing product. And that's a product that allows non-programmers to create quite powerful applications. So in the spirit of Excel, so it uses formulas, but rather than create spreadsheets, it helps people create applications. So that's a wonderful thing about being in a large company and having some roots in that company, that you do not feel diffident when you feel like I've done enough in this space, others can take over, or simply something new has come up and I want to be part of that bandwagon. So there's no rhyme or reason. It's just a personal journey.
Thank you, Vijay. We have a couple of questions, so I will just read the question. First question is from Dr. Anil Khamis, who is our special advisor to Provost Al Khan University. He's asking, the beginning of machine learning AI is based on psychometric processing that you are arguing has creativity potential. If I understand correctly, so what are the limits of human creativity, imagination, and thinking, cognition, that is the basis of current AI applications? And would AI inform human thinking in a dialogic, learning manner? The basis of this question is Kasparov noted is that we must learn to live with machine learning AI, but how and to what limits as well, as to what applications, for example, personalized learning, new medicines based on individual genomics, etc.
Yeah. So like I will take the individual genomics and new medicines or a new wellness part separately. But I think right now, the mainstream means something where overwhelming number of people are working. Mainstream doesn't mean where there are some thought leaders. But the mainstream work in deep learning, at least, which again is the largest part of artificial intelligence. If you go to a deep learning practitioner or somebody who's a deep learning researcher, and you say, is your work influenced by how the human brain works? They will say no. It really, I'm sure there are people who wrote those papers, but in every era of computing, there are people who say, this is how the human works. When we had the original work by Alan Turing, I'm sure he felt that the way that his computer, which was not electronic yet, computed was the way humans worked. Much later when we had expert systems, people said, well, this is how people work. They have latent rules. Some are overt, some are not overt. And now it's like, well, in the human brain, there are connections so we can have these deep neural networks. Other people feel that there's another branch of artificial intelligence called reinforcement learning. A lot of things like gameplay that you've seen, things like AlphaGo are based partly on deep reinforcement learning, on reinforcement learning. And there are papers that say, well, inside the human brain, there are dopamines that have the effect of reinforcing rewards, giving us rewards, making us do good things and make us do less bad things. And that's how we learn. It's not clear. And most importantly, it doesn't matter at this point. So I want to give you a very simple example where I'm trying to avoid the question very, very, sort of strongly. We thought 5 or 10 years ago that the problem of machine translation of Chinese or Mandarin into English and vice versa, would be solved by hiring a lot of grammarians and linguists and ethnomethodologists. And sure, those people did make some progress, But in the end, it was simply brute force, learning over billions of artifacts that we found success in. So right now, none of us really want to claim that we are inspired by or driven by a serious knowledge of how the human brain works. Having said that, and then I go with the Jim as well, having said that, we are finding and discovering, it's a voyage of discovery. We are discovering that we can start amplifying people in some creativity. Now, whether we, meaning the AI is being creative, or AI is just giving you 20 examples from which the human gets creativity, still, I don't want to attribute that. So I'm not saying AI is being creative. AI has a lot of variety, but what is creativity is a value judgment. And only we believe the human has that, because none of our AI systems know why they are recommending what they're recommending in the sense of knowledge. And the last part is personalized medicine. Yes, that is really where we see AI doing very well. Mainly because, I mean, people have claimed for a long time and that gene expression influences everything, all the way from, let's just take the world of cosmetics before we go inside the bloodstream medicine, you know, aging, skin firmness, tightness. So why should everybody get the same skin cream? Well, because we cannot measure everyone's gene expression, and we don't have ways of formulating precision medicine just for Vijay Mittal. And that's really where AI is good, which is interpreting signals, local signals, and creating local minima, maxima, whatever happens to be the right thing. So yes, it's a very long answer, which was deliberately designed to be a non-answer to the point of, does AI have human values? If it does, I have no idea of knowing how.
Thank you, Vijay, for a thorough answer and very interesting one. So I will take one question from the auditorium, and then we will go back with a couple of questions online. Kashif.
Yes, thank you. First of all, it's an honor basically to talk to you from this auditorium. This is Kashif Siddiqui, and I am Director for Health Information Systems and Electronic Health in Aga Khan University. So I was just thinking about when you were talking about the culturally sensitive AI. So what about the driverless cars in a town, basically, where everybody is driving with the cultural background, basically? And so whenever you are on the street, basically, you see the culture generally, right? And a driverless car, basically, how it is going to behave in a culturally sensitive AI environment. So
that's very interesting, actually, because right now, the focus is on avoiding that large truck that happens to have broken down at the crossroads. And what we haven't done is really gone to the next, in other words, we're still solving the first layer problems. What we haven't done, and exactly in your example, there are three people driving that are, human drivers, and one of them nods at me. One of them glares at me, right? Well, it depends. Is it road rage? Is it friendliness? Do they want to have a chat? So right now we're ignoring all of those things entirely. So you're absolutely right. Driving is also an expression of somebody's persona in some way, to the extent you're allowed to do it. We just haven't come to that part. But yes, it's an interactional sort of occasion as well. So yeah, I think that was the thrust of your question.
Thank you, Vijay. Another question, by when do you anticipate that artificial intelligence will be able to emulate human values, such as empathy, theory of mind, sarcasm, and cultural sensitivity?
Yeah. So I will use the word, AI can aspire to pretend to be empathetic. You can train AI to look like empathy in interesting ways. There is a system that's originated at Microsoft Research Asia, is now spun off into a separate company called Xiaoice, Xiaoice. And it is a bot that talks to the human. And in China, there is has long been a one-child policy. So a lot of people are alone when they go on a drive. They are alone for hours, and this bot is designed to talk to somebody who's driving or who's alone. And they chose the persona of a 14-year-old girl, which is a persona in China, I cannot understand that fully, apparently is considered the one that people will forgive the most mistakes of. And yet you feel intriguing enough to talk to. So you can design a system to feel like empathy. I do not know at this point we have the ability to know whether we have empathy. So you will get situations where some of the answers will surprise you, like, really? That's so insensitive. So we can engineer things, but engineered things have limits. They're brittle.
Thank you, Vijay. Another question, how do you suggest clinical researchers to get themselves trained in AI or machine learning for those working here in Pakistan to develop their capacity? Any groups, any suggestions for all the learners who would like to enhance their capacity in AI and machine learning?
Right. So look, I gave a recent talk in a panel in Germany, and I was surprised to know that a head of a German medical college, this is what he said, that in Germany, you cannot qualify as a doctor, at least right now, unless you've taken at least a couple of artificial intelligence courses. And so firstly, do we require people to take AI courses? In Harvard, AI courses are oversubscribed. Harvard is mainly a liberal arts university. So people who are doing humanity and music, things like that, they are taking AI courses. So I would advise everyone to get familiar with this thing, even if just to critique it, like the way we are critiquing now. And the good part is this: AI is a completely open source domain. You don't need to pay anything. Almost everything is available out there. Sure, there could be an expensive private version, but almost everything is available. Go to systems like Hugging Face, which are open source libraries. So I think AI is a practical discipline. Start with watching videos on YouTube, incredibly informative lectures, and download a couple of libraries and just try them out, right? The instructions are step by step. The barrier to entry is very low right now.
Thank you, Vijay. Are you okay if I can continue with a couple of more questions?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
My next meeting is not until a couple of hours from now.
That's great. So I have another question. So do you think biocomputers can make their way into mainstream treatment options in the next decade? And is it something Microsoft is also working on?
Okay, so I'll try and stay away from going into what Microsoft is working on. It's a very, very large company. Like I think now we've just 250,000 people or something like that. Yes, I do work on, so I just confine to my own interest areas and make a comment on the basis of that. There are many ways of thinking about drug discovery. There are ways of thinking about drug discovery that says that you have to, if you know every experiment that's ever been done, any molecular assay, and you understand each molecule structure all the way down to 3D geometry from AlphaFold, Rosetta Fold, then you can start sort of saying, if something happened in a molecule or group of molecules that have this ring or have this fold or protein this is fold, then we are likely to have it in this drug as well. So that's one way to think about it, which is know a lot to inform every decision. There is another branch of AI that's working and that's not one I'm working on, where they're saying that in the end, biochemistry is just physics. And if you can model everything down at quantum energy level, right? And find a way of simulating that and find a way of doing calculations at 10 to the 24, 10 to the 30 faster speed, one way or another, then you'll be able to simulate the behavior of the entire cell, one day the entire organism. So both of those things are works in progress. We do have some successes, but claiming that researchers have invented or discovered a molecule they would never have been able to discover without AI, I think at this point is a claim too far. I think the nearer term aspiration is, can you help me shorten a 3-year experiment cycle to 3 months? That's dramatic already. So I think that's really what I can foresee. It's just that in AI, no one has ever foreseen what's going to happen 5 years from now. So I don't know what will happen 5 years from now.
Thank you, Vijay. Another question I have received. AI still seems a fancy word for the third world countries. Therefore, how AI can help transforming lives of common people?
So I did not understand necessarily the first part, which is AI seems a fancy word for the third world, but I did understand the second part. I mean, does the questioner want to just elaborate just a little bit on that, if they're in the auditorium? Otherwise, I can speculate myself.
Yeah, I think what they are, this is an online question. I think what the person is asking is that it seems like we are hearing a lot about AI in our.
Oh, okay.
How this will be impacting a common person, as if we can see in the real terms.
Okay, so every time we read a news feed and we say, it's amazing that the next piece of news the system is recommending is designed to inform me in the vector that I wanted to be informed, you are experiencing AI, right? So AI is embedded already. It's not something that we are having to wait to experience. If we are using an online service, almost certainly it's using AI. The computers, the cloud is, the service is running on are being optimized by AI. So AI is really, it's almost like saying mobile computing, cloud computing, desktop software. It's there. It's a fact of life. What we are discussing today is more like the edges of AI, in a sense, the emerging AI. So I think whether we live in the first world or third world, we're getting AI. And if I may say, the first world is really envious how quickly third world, so-called third world, has adapted or adopted digital payments, right? Mobile technologies, all kinds of digital first processes, because they are leapfrogging what people with established economies are having to struggle to remove. So I'm not really sure that it's an esoteric or fancy concept. I think if you're using a mobile phone, you're probably using AI about 50 times every minute.
Thank you, Vijay. We will take 2 more questions, and then I think we will say thank you to you. So the one question is about use of AI with the challenges in privacy. How do you see that actually working together? Because as much as we are dependent on AI machine learning, then also citizens are confused about what will be happening with their privacy. So where do you see there is a balance?
So I would mention to you 2 techniques that I think that have been developed, and really it's a question of making sure that they are applied. So one technique is called differential privacy. So what that means is that when you collect data, you corrupt it at source. You change the gender, you change the age, you change just 2 or 3 symptoms of a disease that a person has. So it's not easy to trace it to one individual, but you do this so-called corruption in such a way that statistically the entire group is still representative of that group. So differential privacy is one technique that people are using to make sure that data, when it leaves, has already been changed so much that you cannot reconstruct it. The other technique that people are using is called federated learning, where the AI is operating on my phone, on my PC, and is only sending some partial learning vectors to a central computer. So data never leaves. So this is something which is so mainstream. Everybody is aware of the privacy concerns, and we know that they have to be foremost. So certainly, as we work with hospitals and other organizations who take privacy very seriously, they are applying techniques like this. But also, why are we giving all the information just because there is an option to use a service that is free? I mean, do not, be careful what you say yes to. So that itself is about individual responsibility. Like, why am I? Just because something is free doesn't mean they should be able to take every piece of information I have. So we take privacy very, very seriously, and we sort of advise people on that.
Very interesting. So there's another question. The question is, can we develop an AI general practice algorithm for low and middle income countries? Can we develop something like this in the next 5 years, standardizing primary care in LMIC countries?
So I'll give you an anecdote first, and then sort of see if that's the right inspiration. So when somebody is on a ship, on board a Navy ship, right? There could be, if it's a really large ship, there could be a local pathologist. Maybe there's one doctor. And that doctor is not an expert in every disease. If you've got 500, 1,000 young people doing strenuous activities, they're going to develop all kinds of ailments. So this doctor, this pathologist needs the ability to do things beyond their own personal experience and specialization. So AI is being developed to help that person quickly triage information, to say, no, this is okay, this is run of the mill, or this is something serious, you better consult a real specialist in that area. So I think that the very first thing we can do, and we can aspire to, because the effect of going wrong is still moderate, is to be able to quickly identify whether the information you've gathered from a patient is enough, and whether that information needs intervention by some specialist or needs a referral. So that alone, I mean, I'm giving you that as one example of a pain point when a physician is seeing 1,000 people in a day as opposed to 40 people in a day. And when the physician is having to cover a large variety, a large spectrum of ailments, and not just people who've self-selected to come to her or him. So yes, absolutely. I mean, that is the kind of thing we would expect AI to do. What we don't want to, on the other hand, claim yet is that AI can diagnose what the problem is and provide a treatment. So in triage, in referrals, in narrowing down questions, what follow-up questions to ask, absolutely, we are seeing that.
Thank you for the detailed answer. We can take one more question if that is okay. Yeah. Can you please share your thoughts on role of AI in medical education? What are the current or crucial areas you think are being explored for use of AI in teaching, learning, and assessments in a curriculum?
Right. So the pandemic caused a really serious advance in helping AI to help people in testing, right? Because people were not sitting in a large classroom or auditorium and taking the same test. There are people working at different time zone, and we wanted to make sure that people aren't cheating, right? They're following. There's other AI. So that's one. One is to sort of prevent things going bad, but that's not where I want to go. We have plenty of software that is being developed for self-driving cars, or more like driver assistance AI that keeps track of when a person is concentrating, when they're about to doze off, when they are distracted. There are techniques now of helping people with the right music, with the right stimuli. So I'm saying education is a very, very broad word, right? Can you make it more efficient for me to understand what I want to understand? Can you bring the resources, all the resources that are relevant to me right now at my fingertip, as opposed to me having to go to a library to and search through books? So at the very least, we can make it more efficient for people to absorb large amounts of information and to have mini tests long before I give my examination at the end of the quarter, at the end of the semester. So yes, we're seeing that AI is becoming part of the loop, but the way to think about it is AI is amplifying the teacher as opposed to substituting the teacher, amplifying the reach of the teacher.
Thank you very much, Vijay, for your time. A very interesting discussion and sharing your wisdom and knowledge. On behalf of Aga Khan University, I would like to sincerely thank you and appreciate your time. And please count us in for any joint venture, joint innovation, research work. We are already a big shop of Microsoft. We are practicing a lot of things. But of course, we are also interested to be part of any interesting engagements in terms of technological innovation or research. So please just keep us in your mind. So I really want to thank you for your time. And you can see there's so much interest, so many questions. And I would also like to thank all the participants who are present here in the auditorium and all our online participants. This lecture has been recorded, and then in a couple of days, it will be published on our YouTube channel and also from the University of Central Asia, their YouTube channel. So thank you very much, everyone, for your time. And thank you, Vijay, once again. Thank you.
Yeah, can I just say one last word, please?
Sure.
So, look, I wasn't sure. I was 90% sure that this audience doesn't need any explanation of AI, that if I just go straight into the topic, they would already know. And I'm so glad that I made that assumption. People, the questions are not first level, second level questions. These are, PhD level questions and leading edge questions. Thank you for these questions. And I've taken note of some of those, and I'll try and incorporate, these inflections in my conversations later on. Thank you indeed. It was a great learning experience for me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vijay. Thank you. And thank you, everyone. Have a nice afternoon. And I would like to thank also University of Central Asia and then CXO Global Forum for actually collaborating this lecture. Thank you, everyone, and have a nice afternoon.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye, Vijay. Thank you. It's disconnected, right, from the... Okay, so I think there are some snacks because we have been keeping you here from last 2.5 hours. Sorry for that. Next time we will of course ensure not to actually combine two big events together. But thank you everyone for your actually presence here. Thank you.